All right, let's dive into the story of someone truly remarkable, Saint Catherine of Siena. We're talking about a woman from the 1300s who just completely shattered all the expectations of her time. And that really gets us to the core question, right? The big puzzle we're going to unpack. How in the world did a pious laywoman, not a nun, not royalty, just a regular person in a way, end up becoming a major political player? I mean, it kind of makes you rethink what power and influence even are. So just look at this. It's like two completely different people, right? On one side, you've got this deeply faithful woman whose life is all about prayer and mystical visions, and then bam, on the other side, a political powerhouse, a voice that's actually shaping what the papacy does, a real force in the chaotic world of Italian politics. So how do you get both of those in one person? That's the story. Okay, so to figure her out, we have to go right to the source of her authority. And you know what? It wasn't money. And it wasn't a fancy title. It was something way deeper. It was her mystic's calling. And for Catherine, pretty much everything, her entire incredible life, it all started with a vision. Okay, and this is where the story gets really wild. She was just 7 years old, 7, when she had her first mystical vision of Jesus. Think about that. This wasn't just some daydream. It literally set the entire course for the rest of her life. And then later, another vision, this time of Saint Dominic, inspires her to join his order. For her, these weren't just dreams. Nope, these were direct orders from on high. So, let's just be clear about what we mean by mystic. It's not some vague, spooky thing. It's all about seeking a direct, personal connection with God. And for Catherine, this was her reality. It was a lived experience. That direct line to the divine as she saw it, well, that became the bedrock of her authority. It was unshakable. So when she spoke, people listened because they thought they were hearing more than just Catherine's opinion. So the big question is, how do you take that deep inner spiritual life and turn it into actual real-world political power? Let's get into how she went from vision to voice. It really boils down to this. Her influence was built on words. Think about it. This was a time of armies, of warring states, of powerful families with tons of money. Catherine had none of that. Her weapon, her power, it came from her words. She literally used her voice and her pen to change the world she lived in. And just look at what she did. This wasn't some background role. Oh no, she jumped right into the middle of high-stakes politics. She wrote hundreds of letters to popes, to kings, to generals, telling them what to do, even scolding them when she thought they were wrong. She was a fierce defender of the papacy. Famously, she's the one who pushed the Pope to finally leave France and go back to Rome. And on top of all that, she wrote these major theological books that sealed her reputation as a serious thinker. So, after a life like that, this whirlwind of faith and action, you can bet she left a huge legacy. And that legacy was recognized with some of the biggest honors the church has. We're talking about titles that were earned, forged by real-world influence. First up, she was named a Doctor of the Church. Now, you have to understand, this is a huge deal. It's an incredibly rare title, especially for someone who wasn't a priest, and for a woman with no formal schooling, it basically puts her on the same level as the absolute greatest minds in church history. And of course, her impact was felt right there at home. All that work she did trying to make peace between the fighting city-states in Italy, well, for that, she was named a patron saint of Italy. She became a symbol of unity for the very people she fought for. But her influence didn't stop at Italy's borders. Not even close. Her ideas, her passionate defense of the church, her call for everybody to come together, that resonated all across the continent. And so in recognition of just how far her impact reached, she was eventually named a patron saint of all of Europe. So where does all this leave her today? Well, to put it simply, right at the very top. St. Catherine of Siena is still one of the most influential and popular saints in the church, period. Her story, this incredible mix of faith and action, it still inspires millions of people. And that brings us full circle, back to that first big question. Her life really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Was it her absolute conviction, her sharp political mind, or just the incredible force of her personality? What is it, really, that gives one single voice the power to endure and to actually change the world?